Welcome to another episode of Health Your Way podcast, where we discuss health issues ranging from physical, mental, emotional, as well as current facts. Today, we're going to be talking about public speaking and anxiety. As you can tell, I have a bit of it, but it's getting better. And I have my guest speaker, Brenden. He's the founder of MasterTalk. And as he mentioned earlier, Brenden, tell us about yourself.
Of
Go
course,
ahead.
of course, Mo. Such a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of MasterTalk. It's a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. But the better question to ask yourselves is, how did anxiety play a role in my life when I was growing up? So, when I was 5 years old, my parents looked at me and they said, "Well, Brandon, you live in Montreal, Canada, and you need to learn French." And I just
You
looked at them.
speak French.
We
Yes, you
spoke French,
do.
and I just went,
Oh,
"What?" And they were like, "Well, you got to learn the language, buddy. So we're sending you to a French education system." So not only was I uncomfortable with presentation, like all of us who are listening right now, I had to present in a language I didn't even know. So when I was in grade one or grade two, I'd stand up there as a 7-year-old and then look at the crowd and go, Bonjour? And
oh
that
my
was my
God.
life, right? Obviously, I'm trilingual now. It helped me later in life. But the point that I'm driving for that message is I know what that anxiety feels like. And that's why I started Master Talk, because I want to live in a world where we can all share ideas openly. If we can all go out there and share what we believe, do what we do, and have the courage that you had today, Mo, to start this podcast a year ago, the world would just be better because we would just understand what everyone is saying. And I hope to be the bridge of all of those people.
Oh, look at you! Look at you! You want to be the you want to be the connector. And okay, on a, I think a lot of people are watching you, and they listen to you talk, and you speak so well, and like you have the YouTube channel. I've had the pleasure of actually watching some of that stuff, and I've learned the pause and moment. But anxiety and phobia, I don't. I think for me, when sitting in front of a bunch of people, what is in your experience? What's the most common reason why people are scared to be in front of other people and talk,
Right. That's a million
besides being
dollar
scared
question.
out of the mind?
Absolutely. Let me give another context here to kind of help us
Okay.
explain this. So that's a very fair point, right? I talk to people in Japan and Asia and Europe, everywhere when I'm on their shows and stuff, and they always ask me, they're like, "Where does the fear of public speaking come from?" But what fascinates me is it doesn't really matter where you're born. You seem to have it, but we don't know why. So let me shine some light there. The question we need to ask ourselves is, where do we give most of our presentations? The answer, whether you're born in India, whether you're born in, I don't know, Korea or the States, is school, elementary school,
High
right?
school, in front of people, your
College,
peers, and everything.
right? College, university. Because let's face it, whether you're a high school dropout or a PhD, it doesn't really matter. This is where you learn the presentation habits that last throughout your life. And what you need to keep in mind in this example, the learning here is presentations aren't fun for
They
most of
suck.
us. They suck, right? We don't wake up one morning and go, "Hey Mo, you want to get breakfast and present all day?" That's not a
No.
it's not a thing. You're like, "No, I want to eat I don't know, cakes."
I want to do something else.
Just
Yes.
something else, yeah, right? So all for most humans out there, 99% of all of the presentations have all been mandatory. They've never been for fun,
Fair enough.
right? So let's dive into that. So we're sitting in high school together, and the history teacher comes up to us and says, Mo, Brent, I need you to do a presentation on the Renaissance. And you're sitting there like, what is this, like a fruit or something? And
Renaissance. Please, before you go further, explain to people what Renaissance is, a time of
yeah,
era,
it's just a,
okay?
yeah, I was going to say, it's just a time period in history.
Yes.
And three things happen. Okay. Number one, we never get to pick the topic. And if we
Okay.
do get to pick the topic, it's generally something we're not passionate about.
Okay.
So you can't walk up in high school and look at the teacher and go, "You know what, man? Or gal, I want to present my podcast." He's going to look at you like, "What's a podcast?"
Yeah.
Talk about the Renaissance. Number two, students don't care to listen to us. Not because they don't care about us. So let's say you're standing up there, Mo, and you're presenting. You're worried because, hey, why isn't anybody paying attention to me? Is it because I'm a bad speaker? Not at all. The reason nobody's paying attention to us when we speak in school is because I'm sitting in the classroom biting my nails because I got to go 10 minutes after you.
Oh,
I'm thinking about my own presentation. I'm not paying attention. I like you as a person. We all like each other. We're all great people, but we're not paying attention to each other because we're worried about our own. School is one of the few presentation environments where you present to other presenters. So let's say in this podcast, people are listening to us. We probably have most of their attention because they're not podcasting after us. They're
fair enough.
listening and taking notes. But in a school setting, that's not true at all. Whenever you're presenting, it's after somebody else's presentation, before somebody else's presentation. So you're never really paying attention to anybody. You're just thinking about your own presentation. Number three, teachers. Teachers are very well educated, very well intentioned, but also very stressed. If you got 50 students in a class, you got to go through all of them in 2 classes. Do we have time to coach Mo for 10 minutes and say, hey, let's work on your presentation skills? The
I
answer
see
is
what you're saying.
no, right? So let's recap this, right? So in almost 100% of all the presentations you get in your life, you're presenting topics you don't care about to students who don't care to listen to you, to teachers who are too stressed to coach you. And this behavior gets repeated in everything: history, math, sciences, languages, French, English, music, on and on and on and on. We're taught to believe that public speaking is a chore. It's a responsibility. If you're at school, it's tied to a grade. And if you're at work, it's tied to a
Tend to,
result.
yeah.
And if you fail at any part of that journey, you get punished for it. Whether it's a lower grade in your oral presentation at school or the promotion you don't get at work. And that's the punchline.
You're
The
depressing me.
punchline, well,
But go ahead. I
it's
know.
to help us understand.
I know, but you're
That's the
still
point.
depressing
No,
me.
it's supposed to be a positive conclusion. Here's the takeaway. The takeaway is that the fear of public speaking has nothing to do with us, but rather the system
Learning so, yeah.
in which we grew up learning. It's not our fault. My youngest client and most successful client is 6 years old.
Aww.
6 years old. She's one of my executives as kids, and she's incredible. She's a better speaker than any executive ever coached. She's better than her dad. Like, not even comparable.
Aww.
Why? Because I'm the one who taught her, not the system. Because the
Fair enough.
system tells you got to present this, Mo. You got to do this. You better stand up like this. Your presentation better be 13 minutes, not 14. But in my class, it's what do you want to present? What do you care about? Let's have fun. She sings songs in her introduction. It's the mindset. We need to shift the way that we look at public speaking from a chore, from a way to make a difference that matters. How many people have reached out to you, Mo, and said, hey, Mo, your podcast has really made a difference in my life?
I've had a few, like I've had a few that come up and they say thank you for the platform, and I think that's one of the reasons why I keep doing it because I'm like at first I was a little nervous. Then when you get the one or two, like yeah, you're like okay, all right, I'll keep doing this. This is fun. And then now I'm just like okay, I see it. So you're a lot more comfortable talking, and you want
And
to
that,
perfect your skill set too.
right. So if I asked you the question, Mo, on a scale of 1 to 10, how better are you today than you were the first episode you started this
100%.
podcast? Right.
Even
It's
my
like
boyfriend
11,
says it. Like
right?
it's
You're
100%. I'm a different
everybody,
person.
right?
Yeah.
You're just a different person. You're like Super Mo, right? And that's the point. When we start to reframe public speaking as a way to make a difference, public speaking isn't as scary as anymore. I'll give you another example.
Okay.
Julie is 14 years old. She's in high school. She loves theater and is an introvert. Why is that? Why does that make any sense? Because
It
Julia,
doesn't.
it doesn't, right? To most of us, we think that. That's not true at
Because
all.
she likes drama and everything, and drama is more of an extrovert kind of thing.
Let me build on that. Because
Okay.
that wouldn't be true. Because let's say we think about this.
Okay.
Does it make sense that every single person in theater in the whole wide world is an extrovert?
No.
That doesn't make sense statistically. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Fair
So
enough.
what's the actual reason? The actual reason is Julia's perception of public speaking is different. When you ask her what she thinks about public speaking in her classroom, she goes, "Well, I hate it. I gotta present this Renaissance thing. I don't know." But if you
Ah.
ask her, "What do you think about theater?" Well, it's a way to make a difference. It's a way to share an idea. It's a way to entertain. It's a way to laugh. It's a way to show my personality with people, to get people engaged, to get people thinking. If everyone thought of public speaking that way, we would all be great communicators. And that's what I'm trying to do with the YouTube channel, anyways, by making it fun.
I think understanding that perspective and looking at the history behind it, I don't think a lot of people think about that. Because you're right. When I was younger, I like you either you had a topic given to you, you had a list of topic and you had to pick between that list of topic, or it was within a theme of this class that you're in that you had to pick the topic you wanted to talk about. But it sucked. And when you thought about, like, you're right, when you're presenting to people, nobody really cares. It's not like they didn't like you, but they think about, okay, now what's my next? I have to do this again in the next few hours or tomorrow, and I'm freaking out because I don't want to do this, right? You're not taught how to public speak. You're told to do it, but you're not taught how to do it properly. I didn't realize that. I'm sitting here going, yo, life could have been so much simpler if someone just taught me at the beginning.
That's what I'm trying to do for the world, anyways. Let's hope I make it happen.
Okay, so then when you okay, let's say you get somebody, hypothetically, someone like me itself, and what are some of the tools that you first start with to just not disengage, but basically reteach them the tool and that not to be scared of, not to be afraid of talking publicly.
Right, and it's a lot of the same skills that we apply for anything else we want to learn. But I'll say it specifically to public speak. But let's say you take piano. You know, you do the same song a lot of times. You want to learn how to run. You figure out how to run. You hire a trainer. How does that work in public speaking? Begins with this question that I ask every single one of my clients. You can ask yourself. The question is, how would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator? If you were one of the best public speakers in the world, how would the world change? And if the answer is just, I get a job, work promotion, blah, 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 you're answering it wrong.
I wasn't thinking that, but go ahead. That makes
Not
sense.
you. I'm not talking.
I know. I was thinking, like, I was just thinking. I know what
Right.
you're saying.
Right. Don't worry. I'm performative whenever I'm on
No,
a podcast.
I understand that. No, don't worry about that. I was just thinking, like, who? I bet you somebody out there is thinking that too. You know?
Yeah.
That's what
that's
I'm
why
saying.
I push.
Good.
But if the answer, because we need to remember for everyone who's listening right now, public speaking is not just about presentations. It's everything. It's the conversations you have with your spouse. It's the tough conversations you have with your boyfriend. That's not you directly, to everybody, right? It's the way that you interact with your children if you have any. It's the way that you talk to your friends. It's the way that you do business deals.
Having talk conversations. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I love the support. It's everything, right? It's everything you do is communication, which means there's a lot to that answer than you think. It's not just I'm going to be able to share this podcast with the world. It's, me and my partner all argue all the time, and it's not because we're both doing the wrong thing. It's because we don't understand each other. It's because different meanings have different words, and we're having all this trouble. But if I was a great communicator, we would spend most of our lives just being happy, enjoying the moments together, going to the beach, going to the park, and not having to worry about the toothpaste on whether it was on the left or the right. So the point that I'm driving is for everyone who's listening, that answer is going to be different. But once you find that answer, it's going to be much easier for you to practice public speaking to begin with.
Okay, fair enough. Because then you have an end goal. Like, for example, for me, I would think if I want to improve on public speaking, I think it's more communication for me to make sure that I'm effectively understood, and I can understand where that person is coming from. So I've had to learn, unfortunately, and fortunate, not to listen to understand, not to listen to speak. And I think if I do that, and if I can calm myself down when I'm talking to people, I'm in the meetings, I'm having like a huge people, it's more like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm clear. And then if I'm what I'm saying to that person makes sense, I'm on the same page. I want to make sure there's clarity before I move forward. So to me, it has to be open communication, understanding, and clarity on both ends. Yeah, sorry. I'm just thinking why.
No,
Yeah,
I love it.
okay.
You're absolutely right.
It's just, boy, this is an interesting conversation, because I think for me, communications, like a year ago, if you had asked me, I'm like, look, I just want to sleep. I don't want to talk to anybody. But
Sleeping's
okay.
nice. I can't blame you.
Sorry. Okay, let's step back. All right, for the ones that do know how to communicate, and they're like, okay, you know what, I get how to communicate, but I want to be a good speaker or be a great speaker. There's a good and a great. I think, not to toot your horn, you're a great speaker. I listened to you, but I'm just being honest. But what's the difference between a good speaker and a great speaker? Like, what is that small thing that they can change?
Right.
Help
So there's no silver bullet from good to great, if I'm being honest. But what I will say is there is one thing that great speakers do that good speakers don't. And what great speakers do is they present the same thing hundreds of times. Think about the best speakers in the world. Tony Robbins, I'll use as an example here since most people know him. Okay, Tony's been presenting the same thing for 35 years. Mindset, growth, and business. If you go to one of his seminars and he comes up to you and he goes, you know, Mo, I've been talking about this mindset stuff for 35 years and I'm tired. You want to talk about porcupines this weekend? No. You're going to look at him and say, no, Tony, I spent $2,000 to be here. We are not talking about porcupines. We are talking about mindset. You're going to deliver the same thing that you always do because that's what we expect him to do. That's what we want him to do. That's why we pay him to do it.
Fair
So the
enough.
point that I'm driving is if you want to be exceptional, if you want to be the best speaker, if you want to be amazing at what you do, you need to be willing to communicate the same presentation over and over and over again. So in
Okay.
my case, so I'm 24 today. I've presented what over
Hold on,
20,000
you turned
times.
24 this year, or you
No, I
just
am 24. So
okay?
so I've presented over 1,000 times as of this recording, probably 1,200. But half of those times was the same presentation.
So you perfect your speech and you find different things that you may have learned, and like, okay, let me change that. That sounds more effective. And I guess that makes sense for me. I've done this podcast. You'll be like almost my 60th pod, and I think just talking and just repeating and then finding the right words, it's gotten better. So repetition is good.
Absolutely. Repetition is everything, but then something to add, repetition in the right way is how you want to do
Okay.
it. So most people don't do what we're doing though, because most presentations in general you only present once. So let's say you
Yes.
got a presentation at work where you're not going to present it again. So my solution for people is pick a topic that solves a problem for somebody else. So let's say, I don't know, outside of work, you're a volunteer for a leadership program.
Okay.
You mentor kids who are 15 on how to be a leader. I don't know. I'm just using an example. What's beautiful about that type of presentation is you can do it forever.
Because it's
This is
repetitive
good.
and you can, yeah, I see
Right. It's a
that.
new batch of kids. And what happens is after you present it 10 times, you're not worried about the content anymore. Like, let's say you interviewed me 10 times. Yeah, the first one, you're looking at your script, you're like, crap, I got to make sure he's going to be mad at me or something. But after the 10th time, you're like, well, I know what he does. Like, I've watched his videos. Like, it's not really. So what happens is the questions in your mind change. They go from, am I saying the right thing? Do I have the right content here? To, am I conveying my content in the right way? What
Fair enough.
emotions am I conveying? It's just nobody gets to those questions because they don't present the same thing 10 times. So for you, let's say there's a coaching workshop. For you, the presentation is simple. It's your own podcast. Make a presentation on your own podcast, health your own way. What are you trying to get out of it? Who are you trying to inspire? What are you trying to achieve? What's the goal? Sure, the first time you presented, it's not so fun. You're like, hey guys, my name's Mo, and today we're going to talk about this podcast. When it's the 50th time, your presentation is going to sound something like this. I remember I was in my basement and I was asking myself, what can I do to make a difference in the world? How can I create a
Oh, I can tell you a
platform?
story. I can tell you that
Right? So
story.
at the beginning, and I'm happy to hear it, but at the beginning, you don't know, right? But after, then you're like, oh well, I can tell a story, I can do this, and then you're on your way. So go do that. That's your takeaway.
No, but it's true. I think I was invited to be a guest on a podcast, and I ended up getting trained on how to start my own podcast. I walked in. I go to my boyfriend. We're starting a podcast. He's like, "What?" I'm like, "You gotta learn how to use how to use it." I was like, "We're starting a podcast." I go, It was September, and a month later we launched one. That is what I literally woke up and said, "Yeah, we're doing it. It's
That's it.
easy. Let's do it." Okay. With that said, I think for a lot of people that they find you engaging. I think you're very personal, personable to be the right choice of word. If they're looking for like a public speaking coach to help them with those issues and those phobia itself, like how would they know what the right fit is? Like, is there any credentials that's required, or like what are we looking for when we're searching for someone like you?
Right. So in my opinion, when it comes to coaching for speech, I personally think, I know it's weird for me to say because it's not good for my business, but the way that I see it is I think most people who are listening shouldn't hire a coach yet. So what I mean by that is you want to start getting into the habit of just presenting a bit every day. So
Okay.
Toastmasters Club is great to do. That's like $80 a year or something, depending on
Never
where
heard
you
of it.
live. It's
Okay.
not very. Oh, you should definitely look into Toastmasters. That's
Okay.
the best. They got clubs around the world, like a
Oh,
bunch.
okay.
And it's like, and the membership's like $100, which is a lot less expensive than a coach. Trust me. And then what you
Okay.
could do is go watch my free videos, because remember, I teach people professionally, right? So executives, mostly are my clients or their kids, things like that. So I get paid a premium for my time. But what
Yeah,
I would think,
I understand that.
but since I give all my free content away for free, right? All my content away for free. What you want to do is watch all those videos, learn all that stuff that I teach all of my paid people, and then put that in practice in a Toastmasters club or a meeting. And then as you get better, if you have a reason that's strong enough to hire a speech coach, then I would recommend hiring one. So a good
I
example
see.
is, let's say in your case, let's say you want to be one of the top podcasters in the world. Let's say that was your ambition with the podcast. You would need a speech coach. Like, I would highly recommend one, because it's the
Yes.
fastest way to get there, right? So you can communicate at a 1% level, so you can get more people to follow you. But if your goal is more like, I want this to be a hobby for a couple of years and then be done with it, then I wouldn't recommend a speech coach. So it depends how big the dream is. That's my opinion.
It's fair enough. And I was thinking of that too, because I'm like, I think for me, I'm at the position where I do want to grow. I do want to, and as you can see, improving my speaking in respects to not stuttering and not doing and stuff like that. And I do get what you're saying. You want to make sure that, if you're going to invest in that kind of money, this is where you want to see yourself go, because the speech and coach is not cheap, basically. And there's
Yeah, but it's not crazy either. Like, people aren't going to charge you $10,000, but it's not like,
some people do, some people out there
right?
charge.
Some people do, I know, but but it's not $100 either, right? So you
Sure.
have to figure out that in between.
And also, I think as a coach yourself, you want someone that's motivated and wants to learn, because you don't want to waste your time as well.
Oh
And I think
yeah.
you mentioned your YouTube, right? So besides your YouTube, and if we're going to have that information, but what other best platform are there to reach out to you, or even then look at for more resources? That are you on Instagram? I guess that's what I'm asking. Are you on Facebook, LinkedIn? If they just want to ask you, or even ask you to be a speaker, stuff like that, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram's probably the best way. Feel free to message me directly over there.
Okay.
My handle there is Master Your Talk.
I like that. And I think, if people are reaching out to you from compared to other coaches out there in respects to public speaking, what sets you apart? Because I know that you started off saying that you had to face your own challenges and you worked on. Why are you laughing? I saw that, Brenden. Why are you
It's just
laughing?
you just asked me interesting questions. That's all.
Why are they interesting? You can be honest. Why are they interesting? I am
See,
in a learning
see, see.
session.
Public speaking is supposed to be fun. Look, you're a lot less anxious than you were 30 minutes ago.
So, how are they interesting? And answer the question, Brenden.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I just didn't know it was an interview about my services. But the point that I'm driving for everyone, all you need to know about me relative to everyone else is, I don't like most people in my industry because they don't share their information for free. They have a lot of money, but they don't make free videos. So trust me, I'm definitely the most generous speech coach in the world. Doesn't mean you should hire me, but it definitely means I hope you check out the YouTube videos and learn from what I have to say.
Okay.
If you got any value here.
You did stop. Anything else you want to add, Brenden? Anything else you want to
Yeah,
add?
I'll leave people with my favorite quote, and then we can call it a day. And my
Okay.
favorite quote is, be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you're still listening to what me and Mo are saying right now for some reason, then the only recommendation that I have for you now is, if you want to be great, you want to do amazing things in your life, you need to learn the art of insanity. Don't you find it odd that a 22-year-old started a YouTube channel, not on pranks, not on vlogs, not on comedy skits, but on corporate communication and public speaking tips, went on to coach CEOs that you would probably be familiar with at the age of 23, but also lives in his mother's basement, doesn't plan on moving out of his house,
Brenden,
doesn't own a
stop.
car. And that's the point. Why do any of those decisions make any sense at all? And that's the point I'm driving.
Oh
When
my
all of
God.
the decisions in your life make sense to the only person that matters,
Mhm.
which is you, you're probably making the right decisions.
Okay, fair enough. We all have different big. You get when you said you have to be sane. I'm on the fitness side, so I train. You be trained insane or train to remain the same. So I get it. I get it. I lift a lot of heavy weights for no reason, and people look at me like, "What the hell are you thinking?"
Right. I didn't mean it in that context, but sure. Stay safe,
Okay,
people.
okay. So with that said, Brendan, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for joining us today on our weekly episode of Health Your Way podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share with others, and please feel free to comment below and ask any questions on topics we discussed, as well as future topics you'd like to hear about. Have a happy and healthy week, and be sure to tune in next week for the next episode on our Health Your Way podcast.